Hi, I'm Victoria with Listen Up Homebuyers, the only podcast offering advice and tips from true buyer agents. And today I'm really excited to have Glenford Blanc with me. He is the president and CEO of Pro-Spex, a home and commercial inspection company serving Greater Baltimore, Washington, DC area, and that includes Northern Virginia. Glenn, thank you so much for joining me on Listen Up Homebuyers.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. The reason that I wanted you to come on today, you're my go-to home inspector for many things, but this is the month of May and it's deck safety month. It's also building safety month. You were the first person I thought of to talk about deck safety and just really how important it is and what people need to know when they're purchasing a deck. And just a little more background about Glenn. Glenn has a degree in architecture with, of course, a focus in residential construction. So with all that background, tell us a little bit about what people need to be aware of when they're purchasing a home that has a deck attached.
Well, first thing that I always tell folks is a lot has changed in the requirements for deck construction, especially in Maryland. A lot has changed because we've learned things over the years. Deck failures continue across the area because a lot of decks are extremely old. And when they were built, the standards back then weren't very rigid. And so it's important to understand the deck is exposed to Mother Nature 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And being exposed to Mother Nature for that long, there's a lot of wear and tear that takes place on that deck, even when it's not in use. And so the joints work loose, corrosion sets in, wood rot sets in, things like that. And so if you have a deck that's more than 10 years old, you should have it inspected. Because again, things have changed. We're doing things a lot differently to make decks safer.
Right.
And so, we can don't want to get into all the technical ins and outs of it, but there's lots of things to a deck to be concerned about.
I'd like to get into a little bit of that technical stuff.
Okay.
When we first met, you may not remember, but you were inspecting a deck that was attached to a townhouse, and the deck was on the second level in the back of the property, and it was on these wooden posts that were actually not sitting on concrete support. So if you can just talk me through a little bit about about that. What am I looking for as an exclusive buyer broker going out trying to protect my client? What am I looking at when I'm looking at a deck? What should I be aware of?
Well, historically, one of the primary concerns with older decks is that they are not self-supporting. Look at it this way: if you think of a table, a table stands on 4 legs, and so a deck typically in the past only had 2, and so excuse me, that deck then therefore depends on the connection to the house to provide the additional support.
I see. Okay.
And so the question is how sound is that connection? And if you don't properly maintain that connection, water seeps in over time, and either the bolts corrode, wood rot sets in at the connection, and which causes the deck to come free of the house and fail.
Gosh.
And this is the primary cause of deck failures in this area, because a lot of older decks are built that way. And so this is the first thing we look at. Look at how old is the deck, and look at the attachment. Either the ledger is not. There's a term which we use called flashing. And that is a membrane, could be some type of metal, it could be a type of plastic that's inserted above the ledger to prevent water from getting behind the ledger. In the old days, we weren't doing that. We were just bolting the deck to the house and call it a day.
With bolts that were like how long?
Oh, well, it's not so much the length of the bolt. The question is, what are we bolting it to? And so the outside of the house is really not designed for bolting a deck. There's some extra reinforcement that should be there. And so with older homes, when you simply bolt to the side of the deck, you really don't know what you're bolting it to.
Oh, that's That's
Whereas,
scary.
yeah, in new construction, there's requirement that you reinforce the side of the house in order to be able to bolt it properly. You have to put flashing in to prevent moisture from getting back there. And then there's also the question of, what the types of bolts. You're supposed to use corrosion resistant galvanized steel.
Hmm.
Oftentimes that's not the case. So it looks nice and firm now, but years down the road, that bolt starts to corrode where you can't see it, and eventually the bolt snaps. So there's a lot of things that we used to do that we're just not doing today. And there are a lot of decks that are built that way.
Right,
And
right.
people are going out on them thinking everything is fine.
Yeah, especially when you think about that second level deck, which is a very common construction. I see it all the time
Yeah.
in many homes that are townhomes. And so I remember not too long ago, I walked out onto a deck. I was in Ellicott City, Maryland, and the deck started swaying.
Yep.
And I thought of you because I bet this deck is not attached well to the house because it was just me. And then my client came out and we both agreed that it was probably not a good idea for us to be out on that deck
Yep.
together. And then we went downstairs. But it is so important for anybody who is just going out and touring a house to pay attention to the underside of that deck. Not that we can evaluate it, but just to even just get a kind of a simple look at how it looks, and whether it's rusty and so forth.
Right.
Talk to me about that two-leg support. What is the best case scenario? What am I looking for if a deck is well constructed?
Well, first thing is you look at the ledger. Okay,
What is a ledger?
The ledger is that horizontal piece of wood which is bolted to the side of the house.
Okay.
Okay. And so that horizontal piece of wood, you then attach the joist of the floor of the deck to that.
Okay.
When you look at the ledger, you're looking to see, is it bolted? First of all, are there any bolts? Okay.
Do you see some
no
decks
bolts.
without bolts?
Yes, I've seen decks without bolts. Sometimes they're nailed.
Oh
They use screws. No, you can't use screws. You're supposed to use bolts. And then you look at the bolts. The bolts, there should be a bolt, for example, between each joist, and then they should be staggered. That is one high, one low, one high, one low.
So tell me
the bolts. Go ahead.
Tell me what a joist is, just so everybody knows.
So the joist are the or let's just call them beams, for lack of a better term, underneath the floor on which you're standing.
Okay.
So you're standing on the deck surface. Okay. The parts of the frame that holds up the surface you're walking on those are called the joists.
Got it.
Okay. Those joists are attached to the side of the house via the ledger. So you attach the joist to the ledger runs against the back of the house, and then you attach the ledger to the house itself.
Okay.
Okay. And so how that ledger is bolted to the side of the house is critical. Okay. The bolt should be staggered. That is one high, one low, one high, one low. That prevents the ledger from rotating. Okay. Sometimes we see the bolts are in a straight line. Well, that's a problem. Okay. You look at those very same bolts. If you see any corrosion on those bolts, there's a very good chance what you see is much worse where you cannot see it. The part that's embedded in the wood, because it gets wet, the corrosion could be worse. So any corroded part should be replaced.
Okay.
You look at the what we call the joist hangers, the same joists we were talking about.
Right.
They're attached to the ledger using a metal bracket called a hanger. If those are corroding, they're probably the wrong type. Those should be replaced. Those are some of the simple things you look for. Any type of corrosion tells you those components need to be replaced.
Okay.
That's sort of thing you can start looking at.
I've seen all of those things that you just described. And so what's the fix? I've also seen, and I learned this from you, I've seen wooden posts directly into the ground with no concrete support. And then as I dug around, excuse me, at the base, I saw that they were rotten. And of course they're rotten. They're just sitting in dirt. And I learned from you that post should be on a concrete, footing, and that of course will help it from not rotting away. What is the fix for this? It sounds expensive.
There's a couple of ways it can be fixed. assuming that there is a footing, okay, and age has caused the base of it to rot out. Okay, one, replace the posts,
Okay.
which means you've got to dig out the old footing and pour a new one. Okay. Again, depending on the condition on the footing and how deep it may be possible to extend the footing and pour a new footing and extend that footing above grade, above the dirt, and cut the post. Okay, and then reattach the post to the new footing. So now the footing is above grade. The post itself is not sitting in the dirt.
Good. Yeah.
Okay, that's another method of doing it. But yeah, post rot, it's going to happen over time because nothing's permanent, and a lot of old decks, again, they are this way because you can't see what's going on the ground. This is why people should, if you've got a deck that's more than 10 years old, you should be getting it inspected at least every 2 years, if not every year.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that in Montgomery County, Maryland, they are doing right now free deck inspections. The county is. So residents, you can call that 311 number to schedule an appointment. I also know that they are extending, they're doing it past the month of May because they've had so many requests for them to come out and check the safety of the deck.
Well, we can, another area that's easy to diagnose. Like you said, if you walk out onto a deck and it starts to sway, get off that deck. It shouldn't be swaying. Okay, that's usually one of the first signs. Another thing to look at are the guardrails. Okay, the guardrails should not move. Okay, you hold on to that guardrail and it starts to move. Simple things like that. Something's wrong with the attachment with the guardrail post to the deck. Okay, because once it starts moving, I like to tell folks, things don't get better; they only get worse over time. So this could be a warning sign. Hey, you need to address it. Right. So those are the sorts of things right off the top you can look at on a deck. The deck's walking surface, what condition is it in? If it's splintering, such that you can't walk on it in your bare feet, the nails are starting to pop up. Right. Again, that's a safety issue. So these are things it's easy for a homeowner to see and recognize and to ask, you know what, I need to get this deck inspected. Whether you use the county inspection services, like you said, they are free this time of year for a limited time frame, or you get out a private inspector to come out and help you with that. Yeah. We're talking about personal safety. Yeah. And we've had too many deck failures and people injured for people to ignore their decks. It's just not worth it.
No, it's not. I know we read every spring when the weather gets better and people have a party and they get a bunch of people on their deck, we hear about decks collapsing, and it's a tragedy that really can be avoided. Absolutely. What is your opinion on Trek decking, and can you make the posts out of Trek decking, that material that doesn't break down for forever?
Yeah, those they're not structural.
Oh, okay.
Then they're not structural, so you won't see them for posts. You won't see floored for the joists underneath. You won't see them used for ledgers. Okay. That is typically lumber. The finish surfaces that you walk on, that's different. That's not your structural component. Okay, so no, you won't see that.
All right, but Trek decking it's
other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, it lasts a long time, and
yeah, that's I'm sitting on my deck right now, and that's the way my deck is built. It's that time of year. Everyone wants to get out of their house. Your deck has been out there dealing with the winter, the snow, the salt, and all of that stuff. Before you get your family out, whether you use our company or any company at all, because we do offer a deck safety inspection, or call the county. But get someone out there to have another look at that deck, because your family's going to be safe. You don't have to think about it, and invest in keeping your family safe and deck inspected. Yeah, thank you. That's excellent advice. Glenford Blanc is president and CEO of Pro-Spex, a home and commercial inspection company serving the Greater Washington DC Baltimore area, including Northern Virginia. Glen, it is always a pleasure to have you on Listen Up Homebuyers. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again. Have a good day.